Hello, Simon here, Race. So I have here another Mercedes C-Class C250. We have an engine management light on. It's done 92,000 miles. So I used the Launch UK Eurotab 3 to run a diagnostic scan. Power supply too low. Airflow comparison, so it's probably got a boost leak. Block DPF, exhaust back pressure sensor malfunction, and output for relay circuit 87 has an electrical fault or open circuit. So most of these are going to be triggered off by a bad battery. Let's go into the faults on here in the ECM. Go to data stream. Check diesel particulate filter. So first we'll check the exhaust back pressure sensor. So I had a circuit fault or something or another. Just make sure that it's working, that it wasn't just the battery voltage that's caused an issue here. So we want to see these charts go up and down at the same sort of speed. Yeah, that looks okay to me. So that sensor is definitely working, so we can forget about that one. Fill level of the DPF, B28 pressure sensor, and soot content. Let's put ash content as well. Soot content 25 grams, ash content 0. So maybe somebody's reset that. Diesel particle pressure sensor is 60 at idle. Let's hold it at 3000 RPM. We have 330. Fill level is 400% and calculated soot is at 25 grams. Let's open the bonnet. So I do know, customer said it's just had a replacement battery, so it's under there. I'm not going to really bother taking that out. I'll trust his judgment on that. If he says it's been replaced, battery's been replaced. Now I think most of these issues have just been caused by the battery. So you can see we've got a lot of voltage issues and a lot of circuit faults, which are going to be mainly related back to the fault with the battery, especially the one for the exhaust back pressure sensor. But we can see in live data that the exhaust back pressure sensor is working, but the DPF pressure sensor just down there is reading high because the DPF is blocked. We've got a 60 millibar reading on the DPF at idle, and that should be around about 5 or so, and we have 320 at 3000 RPM, and that should be sort of 40 to 50 millibars. So the usual thing is we just pull off of all of these plastics so we can have a look. We've got airflow algorithm faults, which is usually these pipes get a split in them, and then the airflow that's going in here gets lost out through one of these and it doesn't read the correct airflow, so the engine gets confused. Another thing is on these is the inlet manifold can crack, so we'll just run a smoke test maybe on the engine, make sure we haven't got any more leaks. I can see that hose over there is brand new, but this one isn't. So, but everything around it looks dry. So if we usually just, have a feel of it, if your hands come out dry like that, there is some black there, but that's sort of a dry dirt basically. If you get a wet oily substance on your hand, you've definitely got an oil leak down there, which would be a split hose, and you've got oil vapor coming out. We've got some oil around here. It looks like that may have been from topping her up, but we definitely have oil down in the chambers as well of the glow plugs, which would need a rocker gasket. So the first thing I'm going to do is just get the airflow meter off and open this air inlet, and then we'll test the inlet air with smoke machine. Let's get that off. Now, I can see this car has been worked on by someone, because of course that is relatively brand new. I can see that this has all been off because it hasn't been clipped back together. Yeah, and I can see that fuel filter is brand new. It's had a brand new battery as well. So just take these 4 bolts out from the top of the ECU, and we should be able to just fold this back, just clip that out, this piece. It's on a little clip under there, and we can fold this back. Pull this upwards, just tuck that out of the side and out, and we can see the entry to the DPF just down here. We have the pressure sensor over here. Okay, so I'm going to set this machine up. It's a Launch UK Smoke 2, and this is going to push some smoke through the inlet, and if we have any more visible leaks, they will show up. But I've got a feeling the leak might already be repaired, but they just haven't sorted out the DPF, and they haven't reset the codes after fitting the battery. Now we've got smoke coming, we'll just get this connected back up. Now we'll give that a few minutes to run. If the leak is bad enough, we might see some smoke coming from these injectors, I think. I'm not sure if that's just been spilled when they've been filling the oil from here, or is this seal gone on this cap? Doesn't look so, because that was holding pressure. But there's oil down here between the cylinders. It does look like this was left loose at some point, because you can see the sort of spread of the oil coming from this area, spreading out and then coming down here. So it may not even be a gasket, it might just be that that was left loose at some point. Over there where that new pipe was, you can see there where it's wet in that area. That's where the old pipe would have been leaking. That's just down that area there. Okay, so the smoke machine has timed out. There are no leaks, so it looks like the leak has been fixed. Can't see any leaks from here either. It would show up if there was a leak there. So let's release the pressure. Now I'm going to get down into where the sensor is, so we're just going to open these 3 bolts here. Once we got those 3 bolts out, we can pull this bracket forward, and we have the DPF pressure sensor here. Anytime I clean the DPF on one of these Mercedes, I will always change that sensor. They're about £60–70 from Mercedes, and they can, even though they show they're working now, sometimes they can give intermittent issues. So it's always worth changing on this particular car. And a little bit more of the story with this car is the customer bought the car with a DPF problem. He's just bought it, so he knows a lot of work's been done, and the person he bought it from said, you know, they'd done some work on it, but it needed a new DPF, so he's bought it knowing that problem, and now he's brought it here to me to try and fix the DPF. So I use a pair of these clip pliers here to open those clips, get that bolt off. So then we just use this tool to push the tubes off of the sensor, and that just helps you push those tubes down in a straight line without having to bend them left and right, and you end up snapping these little plastic things off, especially if they're brittle. So that is the DPF pressure sensor. You've got a hose that goes after the DPF here and one before the DPF here, and it reads the pressure difference between the two, and if the pressure is high at the start of the DPF, indicates you have a blockage. Okay, so I've got this DPF cleaning fluid from Launch UK. It's in this gun here, and that is connected to a compressor at 130 psi. So we'll go in the right side tube on this particular car here, the one with the larger diameter, and we'll squeeze the trigger and get this fluid down in there. What this gun does, it foams the fluid up so it expands into all of the little places it needs to get to within the DPF. We'll put about half of this bottle in with the car stationary, and then we'll put the other half in with the engine running. Now we'll give that a couple of minutes to rest in there, and while we're doing that we'll replace this sensor here. Okay, new sensor is on. We've got the engine running. We'll put the rest of this fluid in. If you put too much fluid in with the engine off, it can backfill and get into the cylinders. This DPF is nice and low though, so not much risk of that happening on these, but still, better be safe than sorry. We're just going to hold this now until all of the fluid's gone in. Okay, looks like we're all out. Now we'll let that run for a minute, let any of the excess fluid come back out of the tubes there. Now that's it, all of the fluid's back in, we'll put it all back together. Now we'll just keep an eye on that pressure that's in the DPF. Gonna hold the accelerator up. We've got it on a chart, on a graph there. So it started off at 330 like we've seen before. We'd like to get it down around sort of 50, 60 if we can. Let go the revs. We've got just under 10 there. Okay, now so even though the DPF is now clean, this percentage is locked in, so we need to reset that, and the only way to do that is to go to special functions, teach-in process, and we need to do teach-in replacement particle filter. Now the reason you have to do this is because, as far as Mercedes are concerned, once it gets to 400%, it is a dead DPF. You have to replace it, but there's nothing wrong with the DPF on this. Now I'm going to reset the drift compensation, which is the airflow. That will do the differential pressure sensor that we replaced, and just reset all of the airflow sensors. Okay, now that's all done. We can go back to data stream. Now these numbers are now reset to 0, these two. And we're just going to clear all of the faults. So we'll take the car on a test drive. Just make sure as well that the boost is working by doing a full acceleration. Then we can do another scan after the test drive, make sure that none of the faults have come back. We can see that that's all good. This is the main area we're looking at, the ECM. All of these other ones were just voltage issues. Got one back there in the SAM unit. So it's recording to two lights. Now this one in particular left quite a patch behind. A lot of oily substance. So if you see oil coming out of the exhaust, it's worthwhile checking your oil level. But this one looks alright, and it looks like brand new oil as well, nice and gold colour. So you can see it's definitely had a service just done. So what's clearly happened here is the previous owner has spent some money trying to fix all of these issues. It's had a service, oil changes, new boost pipes, and then he was told that the DPF couldn't be regen because it's at 400% and it needed to be replaced. He couldn't afford to replace the DPF, so he ended up selling the car to this customer here that is here with me today. Now you can see the DPF didn't need replacing. Of course there's nothing wrong with the DPF, it's come down to zero pressure. So we are all done, we've saved that DPF, and we'll see you on one of the next videos.